Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. Here you will learn all things related to healing from divorce, mind, body, and spirit, so you can create a beautiful new life filled with happiness. I'm Rachel Ruby, author of Divorce to Bliss, divorce coach, speaker, and attorney, and I'm so glad you found me here. Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. I'm Rachel Ruby, and today we're going to be talking about healing from divorce following an abusive marriage. It's a heavy topic. My guests today are Lindsay and Makara, and they are the creators and hosts of the podcast Bitch is a Bad Word, and they are both survivors of domestic abuse. So they have turned their personal experiences into a platform for empowerment, raw storytelling, and support for those navigating the complexities of abuse, co-parenting, and rebuilding their lives. With humor, honesty, and unfiltered conversation, Lindsay and Mac are redefining what it means to heal and thrive after trauma. Welcome to the podcast to both of you ladies.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. I'm really honored. And before we kind of dive into the healing aspects as they relate to the trauma of abuse, let's address a very important action topic. And that is, what are some of the steps or some advice that you might give a woman seeking to get out of an abusive marriage? And who needs or is thinking of divorcing but is afraid and has all that fear. What would you tell this woman?
Well, the first thing that we always say is that your safety is the most important factor in any decision that you make, and the safety of your children if you are in a relationship that involves children. So safety factors are the most important step to consider. How do you get there? Well, to be safe, you have to be able to plan, maybe have some, money saved, something hidden away, copies of your driver's license, your birth certificate, any important documents that you want to have. You need to prepare to have those like in a pre-planned, a safe place, give them to a friend. And the most important thing that we've heard, and this is like a collective of a lot of other stories, is that the most dangerous time for a woman to tell her partner she wants a divorce is in person when you're leaving. It's like, get safe, leave, get out of the house. And then when you're safe, you can share that you're ready for a divorce. And I think that's the most critical time, because that's the most dangerous time for a woman leaving domestic violence, is when she asks for the relationship to end.
Okay, that's great. That's great advice. And I guess you can think about that. And so when they ask for the relationship to end, do you suggest them doing this not in person?
Not in person.
Yeah, that's okay.
And if you have, and what we're hoping in our podcast is that we give you tools to arm yourself with any information that you may need. So if you're listening to the show, or your listeners themselves, setting yourself up with a trauma-informed attorney that understands domestic violence in a family law practice, it will be your number one advocate. Yeah. So if you can just start getting those resources, we talk to a lot of people who, you don't have access to money, perhaps. Maybe you don't have your own bank account. Maybe you don't have your own credit card. So after you leave, what's the next step? How are you going to buy groceries or pay for your life? And so it's having a pre-plan of, this is money that I can have access to that they can't take from me. This is, I have my car. There's a lot of people who will suggest, if you're leaving that next day, make sure your car is parked in a way that you can get out easily. If you have ring cameras, is there an exit that you can take that, you don't show up on the ring? Are there, can you have a bag? Maybe you can go ahead and put your gym bag in your car already. Or in my situation, I had a storage unit that I ended up renting as soon as I left. So I was able to safely put things somewhere in transition of, I was living in a hotel for a while. So I needed somewhere that was cheap and safe to, keep all of these things. So, we always say, don't exit how I exited, right? But have and you can really put a solid plan in place And just access to money is the most important factor because you need to be able to live.
Right. Yeah.
I would say if you're in immediate danger and you need to flee, definitely do that. Go to a shelter, go to a friend's house, without planning, like we said, safety is first. But if you have the time to pre-plan and, set up a bank account and set up a different, phone account and kind of take the steps towards your independence, if you can do that safely. And there are divorce coaches out there as well that specialize in trauma and abuse and, helping you take those steps because it's overwhelming. And when you're in that type of abusive situation, you can't think clearly. You can't make decisions. It's a really challenging time. And then if you're scared on top of it, it's support is huge.
Okay. Thank you. That's really important advice. So we all know that obviously healing from divorce is usually never easy, but I think it takes on a whole new meaning when you're coming out of an abusive relationship, because of the fear factor and all of the other things that go along with that. And what are some of the things to be mindful of when you are healing from an abusive relationship after you've left and you're in a safe space? What are some of the things that one might be mindful of, maybe that are a little bit different from just healing from the end of a relationship?
Yeah, you have to understand. I mean, it's a different situation because you're coming out of the reality of a marriage that's fallen apart, but then you're most likely still working through court challenges, or if you have children, how do you keep the children safe? How do you keep yourself safe? Yeah. Understanding, I think, first and foremost, that all healing is not linear. So you're going to be on this journey that is very disruptive. Your road is already rocky, but as you're traveling down with an abuser and you're having to be part of a broken family court system and still co-parent with your children, it's not going to be easy. And I think you have to understand that it is, the challenge is next level. It's better than what you just were in. 1,000,000%. You're going to be healing different parts of yourself. But I think it's also understanding what your trauma is and what your kids have gone through, and to say, this isn't just a relationship that ended. This is a relationship that caused a lot of hurt to a lot of people. And that healing journey is going to be a lot different than say somebody, if you're just talking to a friend and they're like, oh, just go, to the spa, have a glass of wine, just relax.
Right.
You're not there yet. There's not a lot of relaxing downtime when you're dealing with a person who is going to be amped up, very upset. Remember, a therapist I was seeing was telling me that when you leave a relationship, the worst part of that person, like that you saw while you were in the relationship, so the things that just drove you nuts, and that the worst qualities are what you're going to get from them 100% of the time post divorce. So you have somebody with a personality disorder or a tendency to be abusive. Their abuse is not just going to stop because you're no longer in the house. In fact, it could be quite the opposite.
Right. I would think that there's got to be some kind of a control element. So it's the losing control, that person losing control of whatever the other person, the relationship, it's an abuser, right? So,
right. And their perceived reputation is on the line as well, because something that is typically very hidden and kept from friends, family, the public is now at risk to be exposed via the court system and declarations and by, sharing your journey.
Right.
And you're no longer protecting your abuser by staying. So that exposure threat is real for them.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Very interesting.
And I'll say too, coming out of an abusive marriage, you are traumatized and you are suffering from complex PTSD. So it's not the same journey that it would be for other people. And you have to still find a way to function and work and take care of your kids and heal yourself and navigate a divorce or, whatever those logistics may be. So I would say just, seeking support again and therapy, protecting yourself as much as your energy, your mind, your heart, and limiting communication. That's a biggie, because if you have like a constant flow of communication with your ex, then you're just giving them more access to yourself and your energy. Right. So, for me personally, it was definitely like learning how to disengage, learning how to have this protective bubble around my everything, my spirit, my energy. And then you can start to heal.
Yeah.
But if you're constantly like inundated and abused day after day, post divorce, it's really difficult to heal and to move on. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love how you touched on
abuse you.
Yeah.
They'll continue to abuse you.
Right.
You have to know that it isn't, their abuse is not a product of your marriage.
Right.
It's a product of their personality disorder. Yeah. So they don't stop. And they most likely won't stop until they get a new supply or until a restraining order. Yeah. But even still, and they can use the kid as a proxy. They can go through.
Yeah. And we're going to get to that too with the co-parenting. But Mac, you touched on an interesting point about the kind of the spiritual aspect of healing, because I always say you have to heal body, mind, and spirit. And I just love that, folk recognizing that we have energy and how we are affected and how we can protect ourselves in that way, and how important that is, and how sometimes people think, I would assume, I can't, I've never been in this situation, but I have talked to people who have, and it seems, that so much of it is the emotional, physical part of it, of the healing, but the spiritual part is also just as important. And so I love that idea of learning how to protect yourself and kind of putting that bubble or those lights around yourself so you can protect your spirit.
Yeah.
And that's important. Yeah.
And you come out of those situations just broken into a million pieces, and you have to find yourself again and sit with yourself and try to understand it, which is impossible to understand, but do your best to just Also, I feel like I personally know of a woman who, until she was married, didn't know that she had married an abuser, because during the whole courting and time when they were engaged, there wasn't abuse. And once they got married, she was verbally abused, not physically abused, but it started, and it was a friend of mine, and it was really, really bad. And so I have to think that some women might be uncertain as to whether they are actually victims of abuse, given, if it's not just physical abuse and there's other types of abuse. How can someone identify these less obvious signs of abuse, such as emotional abuse, or verbal abuse, financial abuse, things like this, manipulation, before they escalate, so they can kind of start making a plan like you talked about?
Well, I think it's important to understand that domestic abuse, it carries many different forms. And so we talked about emotional abuse, financial abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. So any time someone is in coercive control, of course, is also a different, is also very important to talk about, because those are the little nuances where you're kind of left always thinking, well, like, what did he just say? Like, what he just said, it didn't feel right. Like, anytime that someone's, physically hurting you, for a fact that's abuse. Like, that's the easiest one to decipher. And then if you're in a situation where one person has more control over the other and there's an imbalance of power, you're subject to be abused. So financial abuse, I think, is really important to talk about, because when you're in a relationship with somebody and everything's going well, and then a woman is most likely going to be the person who stays home and takes care of the kids. So her access to money, her ability to work, is usually the person who, takes on that risk. And then the abuser, if they have any other tendencies to emotionally control you or verbally abuse you, their obvious step is to financially abuse you, because if you can't leave because you don't have the means, because you don't have a job, because you've just been home, you're stuck and you're in that cycle. You're under their roof and their control. So I want to empower women to say, you need to have a big conversation before you decide to say, I'm going to quit my job and stay home. What is that going to look like over the next few years? If I stay home, how are we going? Let's have the divorce before we have the kids almost. Like, what is it going to look like for me when I give up my ability to earn an income? And then that way, I think you would probably know pretty soon whether or not somebody's interested in you really having your own autonomy. If they're like shutting it down and saying no. If you're waking up though, then in a morning too, like going back to like, what do you do? Someone who is talking down to you, someone who probably like your friend, they were love bombed and they felt they were amazing and they were valued, and then now they're devalued. And then, we talk about on our show, the narc fault. You tell them something that's very personal to you and that's something, like maybe you're shameful for, and then they use it against you. And then they start slowly like chipping away at your self-esteem, your confidence, how you value yourself. All the things that they thought were amazing about you are now your worst qualities. And most of the time when it's happening so fast. It's not like they just sort of drop like a bad word to you one day and then, months go by, or just, that was just a bad fight. It happens like the love bombing, you're so amazing, to devaluing you happens very fast. So you're very confused. You're left just feeling like, I have no idea what just happened right now. All I know is I don't feel good. And it's kind of hard at this point. You're already, by the time that they reveal the mask, by the time they've conned you into this relationship, you're not ahead of the game. You're really stuck if you don't have your access to your own life.
Do you think in those situations that some women feel embarrassed, like, wow, how did I not know this? And maybe, well, I guess we're going to talk about trauma bonding, right? So maybe that's kind of a segue into that. And if I'm not mistaken, I may be mistaken, but can you talk a little bit about what that is and how it might keep someone in an abusive relationship? Let's go there.
You kind of feel like you feel like it's you. You feel like it's a you problem. Mm-hmm. When someone who used to be so nice to you is now so mean to you, and it's not black and white. Human nature is like, well, what did I do wrong? I must have done something. Maybe I shouldn't have said this. Maybe I should have done this differently. Maybe. And so you're a lot of times like in this self-loathing of like, it's obviously me because right before this, they were amazing. And they're obviously going to tell you about all the other women before that were so amazing or not. Most of the time they're bitches, but, you think it's you. You've created the problem. And so you have to fix it. And whatever you need to do about your like defunct personality, it's a problem you have to sort out for yourself.
They do a very good job of convincing you that it's your problem too. Like over time, it's like
manipulation.
It's just, they just break you down, and then you are in that place of like, okay, what can I do? How can I be different? How can I not make them mad? How can I change my ways? Or, you're constantly like, it's your responsibility to make them happy at all costs.
I can see that. I mean, so again, I wasn't abused, and I'm not comparing this to abuse, but on that token, the last years of my marriage, I was manipulated in a way to feel like I wasn't able. I was specifically told that I wasn't able to have an intimate relationship because I didn't want to have a sexual relationship anymore. And when I left my marriage, again, never been abused, but there was this kind of manipulation going on that when I started my healing process, I realized I felt like, wow, am I really not capable of this? And so that to me is kind of just a little tiny itsy bitsy part of what somebody who's abused must go through. And I can see how that manipulation on a much higher level could just play with your mind and make you feel like you're the one who's wrong. And that's hard.
Well, and if you're trauma bonded, you're believing everything that they're saying. So if you take a relationship that usually moves very fast. Yeah. And in my situation, and maybe less so for Mac, but we moved very quickly from courting to children. And it was in that time, and we connected on both of us coming from failed marriages. So that was the beginning of our trauma bond, was that we would be there for each other to pretty much talk shit about our exes with each other. And then it was like, oh, they're so bad and she's so bad and he's so bad. And there was this, like the dialogue that was like, yeah, they're the problem. It's not us. So it's definitely, it's not me. And then you're looking at them going, wow, she was so horrible to you. That's why you're so great. And so for me, our trauma bond was just the way that we were connected through our failed marriages. And in that time, he would sort of drop sly things like, you're so lucky that you found me. You're so like, who would, you have kids and already, and you're so fortunate that you've met me, and I want to be with you, even though you come with all this baggage. And so remember, you're living in their reality. So everything that they tell you makes perfect sense to you. Outside looking in, people are like, "What? No, come on, give your head a shake. This is not normal." But you're sitting there going, damn, yeah, I am lucky. He does, he likes me and he likes my kids. And I don't know that I could find that somewhere else. And, and he understands divorce because, I was just like, consider yourself lucky.
Oh yeah.
And that is where that hook comes in. And then you are in love with them. And I think it's so important to make sure that it's known. It's okay. I was in love with this person. I wasn't like under some spell and I didn't know what was going on. I fell in love with him. I loved qualities about him that he presented to me in the con that I wanted to see all the time. And then you don't get to see a lot because they show you the true version of themselves. But love is a powerful emotion and it keeps you in places. And then for me, I had kids with them. So then you're like, well, I don't want to break up a family. I can't break up a family again. God, what am I going to look like with 2 failed marriages and a bunch of kids? Like there's no one picking up that baggage. So in that, when you're in it, if you're in love with the person, you're bonded by that love, and that's okay. And that's hard for anyone, even in the best case scenario, to decide to leave.
Yeah. That's where the trauma bond comes into. It is like always trying to get back to that place of love, that person that you knew at the beginning. And, they can be horrible to you and then they'll come back around in the cycle and they'll be really nice again and like remorseful and, it won't happen again, whatever the case may be. And then you're just like, yes, okay, maybe he'll stay this way. Maybe it'll be this way.
Yeah.
Just like he was at the beginning.
So that's what I was going to ask you. So it's aside from the trauma bond, I think there's also just that hope that this used to be such an amazing man. Maybe he'll change.
Right. Or maybe you'll change.
Oh, exactly. True.
Yeah. You think you will change because they are very good at convincing you that you've done nothing or that they've done nothing wrong. Mm-hmm. It's not their personality or their problem. So which I think is what keeps you confused, but it keeps you from being able to truly see the situation for what it is because you're believing you're the problem. So wherever you go, there you are. And that's the reality that they have fed you, and you live in that altered reality.
It's such a big psychological play with the manipulation and the narcissism, and then just taking that, love into the whole picture and the bond and
Mm-hmm. And then God forbid you actually do some research and you're like, oh, you're a narcissist. They're like, what? Narcissist? You're the narcissist. Mm-hmm. And then you're like in this total cycle. But I would read stuff and go, well, this is him. Yeah. 100%. Like he checks every box. Wow. But bringing it up, I mean,
no, you don't want to do that. I would not advise that.
It's like you're being brainwashed, really.
You are.
Yeah. It is. Wow. That's really powerful. That's really powerful. Let's talk a little bit about parenting, co-parenting with abusive former spouses. And how can women do this without getting themselves, sucked back into that whole thing you were just talking about with, the bonding and the psychological control?
Well, the issue is going to be, you have to understand you're not co-parenting. It's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
You can parallel parent, maybe, but you are going to have to come to the realization that you're going to parent and he's going to parent, and they are not going to coexist together. The styles, the work, they'll use, as we said, the kids are going to be the pawn in this game. So once you come to the realization, and I tried for a very long time, after I left, I was like trying to have dinners together, or let's all sit together at the soccer game, or this is how it should be. But that's not going to work when you leave an abusive marriage. And what you're going to need to understand is that the kids are the ones that are going to suffer the most if you keep trying to make things normal, because your relationship wasn't normal when you left, and your new life isn't, and their parent isn't normal either. So I think the best thing to say is stay in your lane. Understand that the more you try to come together, so the most solid parenting plan that you can put in place, to the letter, this is exactly the way that our life is going to look. Getting, if you can, get a mediator or somebody involved to really help you make clear definitions. The one thing I will say is that if there is any break, any gray, they're going to take that opportunity to be like, well, it didn't really say it this way.
Yeah.
The most solid parenting plan you could ever imagine that just spells out everything and how you want your life to look between now and the next till the kids are out of the house is really your best course of action, and then sticking to it and understanding that they're also going to come back with that mask, and they're going to also try to manipulate you. Like, oh, please come on. Let's just do this for the kids. And no.
Yeah.
This is it. This is the new world order. If it's not written in the parenting plan, we're not doing it. And maybe down the line, someone can change and things can be cooperative again, but this is not now, not at the beginning. And we say, find a trauma-informed attorney, find somebody who understands the nuances of domestic abuse, because most of the time it's not reported. And so when you try to sit in front of a judge that's going to see you for 20 minutes and you're all of a sudden just, well, there was all this abuse and there's all this domestic abuse. And he's like, what are you talking about? Why are you bringing these out? There's no proof. I don't have time for any of this. This is so nuanced. It's like you have to just kind of understand that you have to know your truth and know what you went through is real. But when you're working in a system that's broken and flawed, like the family court system, with a co-parent who is going to use that system to their advantage, you have to play by a different set of rules. And I was on the phone with somebody this morning who reached out, and I had spoken to her a few months ago, and I said, I'm going to just tell you what the next few months are going to look like with him. And you can choose to believe me or not, but this is what's going to happen. And then she just said, Lindsay, oh my God, everything you said was going to happen has happened, and it's 10x, and I can't believe it. And now we're like, they're back in court. There's all these allegations. They're all fake. And they will use the system to continue to abuse you and the children. And I would I would say that this type of personality disorder doesn't have that, they lack empathy. They lack situational awareness of like the kids are the pawn. It's not an act of love. It's an act of control. So however they can control you, they're going to use those kids to do it. So how do you protect your peace? We're still working on it, but I think the most solid plan that you can get in place, and like, this is what the 24 hours of each day are going to look like. And we're not going to veer off this path.
And even because I did practice some family law for a little bit years ago. And I've seen that, what you're talking about. I didn't have an abuse case, but I've seen, in court waiting for my turn in front of the judge. And to your point, talking about having this ironclad agreement, and the things that are important there are also what the other person can't control. For example, let's say they're supposed to take the children that night and they're sick, or they don't want to and they're trying to make up an excuse to talk to you. There has to be they have to contact the attorney, or they have to be able to contact somebody to change the plan. So that's why it's important to talk to an attorney who specializes, like you said, in this kind of thing, because you want to cover as many bases as possible when you're dealing with someone who is manipulative and wants to be in control. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We had a guest on Bitch is a Bad Word, Bill Eddy, and he runs the High Conflict Institute, and his page and his resources are so amazing for your listeners, our listeners who are going through a situation like this, because you need to have an informed team. And, we had divorce coaches. We had Kate Anthony on our show. She was amazing at like how breaking it down. What you have to realize is that you're not in a normal divorce. It's not normal. It wasn't normal when you were in it, and it's not going to be anywhere close to normal when it's not. And, once you learn it, and we didn't know this. This is why we started Bitch is a Bad Word, is I wish I had known the things that I'm learning after the fact, because I would have saved myself a hell of a lot of angst and sadness and, unnecessary spending and legal problems. And that you ultimately have to understand they're not going to go away. And in fact, you're most likely going to continue to be up against them because they're adult bullies.
Yeah. But thank you for what you're doing just to get this out there and share your stories. And that takes a lot, and to help others. And that's amazing. Is there also, what about the fear of a woman coming out of this and dealing with all this and finally, hopefully getting through this long process of healing from this relationship, and fearing getting into another similar relationship? What can women do to avoid that from happening again?
I think it's fixing your picker.
Yes.
Fine tuning your picker.
Yes.
Realizing like you're going to attract what you put out. Back to the energy component. You need to like that energy or whatever attracted to you and that person to you is something that you need to work on and be in a place where only good people are coming towards you, but which is a challenge because you're going through the worst imaginable circumstances every single day. So maybe not dating, maybe you don't need to meet anybody for a little while. Maybe you do need to keep get yourself in a good place, get your kids in a good place, because there is a risk that, you will attract somebody similar. We say this, do a background check, please, on the next person you date, because if there has been any sort of problem or they have been abusive to anybody that's reported it, it'll show up. And I think that is important to do. I didn't. And had I would have discovered some things that would have made me make different decisions. So I'm a big background check proponent. Go for it. There's nothing wrong with asking. Yeah. Or just doing it. You don't have to even tell them you're doing it. Just understand who you're with. And then those red flags, those first red flags that they throw out are never going to turn green. Just leave. It's okay. And we say this all the time. Like, we've been taught as women and girls, be nice, say yes, be nice. Don't be nice. Be a bitch. Get up and say, I'm leaving. I'm leaving this dinner. I'm leaving this date. I'm getting off this phone call.
No more chances.
Yeah. The second they throw that flag out, that's it. They're telling you that is.
Yeah.
I would say boundaries. We have talked about this. We both lacked boundaries and we're people pleasers and, the empath wanting to help and heal. And, I can just like touching on what you said earlier. You think you can help them. You think you can, just love them so hard that they'll be better. Or they'll feel better. They won't be angry. But coming out of this and just digging so deep into myself and like, how did this happen? And how did I end up in that? And like, why didn't I walk away when those red flags started? Why, so just the digging deep and realizing that I had zero boundaries. I was a total people pleaser. And, and then in that, my self-worth was beat down, my confidence. So it's a bad combination. Now I'm at a place where if I were to enter into a relationship like that again, I would be like, oh, hell no. No, you're not going to call me a name or lose your temper on me or, just the things that I accepted before that I won't accept anymore ever again.
Yeah. And that's because you took the time to do that work. And I think in healing in general, just taking abuse out of the situation, just healing from divorce. Okay. And then I'll bring the abuse back in. But there's a lot of fear. Women have a lot of fear. And one of the two, in my opinion, biggest fears, the two biggest fears from what I see are the fear of being alone and financial fear. And so the fear of being alone oftentimes can prevent a woman or a man too, either one, from really doing that deep dive, because not only are they afraid of being alone, but they're afraid of what they might discover when they go into themselves, right? And to be able to heal, we're always healing. It's not like, bam, you wake up, I'm healed. We're always healing. It's a journey, right? That's why they call it a journey. And it doesn't just stop and it goes on. But I can imagine as an abuse victim in a marriage, like you talked about, it wasn't a normal relationship. It's not a normal divorce. There's so many more and deeper facets that you have to heal, that you have to turn inward. And so that you can come from love when you are ready to find another partner, or at least not to find another partner, but when you are ready, when you love yourself, and you will attract that different energy in a person. So, I think that all healing is challenging. And when you come out of an abusive relationship, it's, of course, so necessary to do. And I always coach people not to jump into dating until they come to that point where they can love themselves and know themselves and understand what it is they want, what it is they need from themselves, and when they're ready from another partner. And I think that doing that work coming out of an abusive relationship is a lot harder, but it is so worth it. So you don't repeat this pattern, right? Because nobody wants you, and I'm sure you don't want to repeat the pattern.
No. And it's having patience with yourself, and you're going to be in a unique situation because you're going to have to find a partner who is willing to take on a lot more than somebody who just left a relationship because it was no longer serving them. So you have to understand that you're coming at it. We're in relationships, and I did date pretty quickly, but I was already done. By the day I left, I had left, it was time. But, what my partner has to go through on a daily basis of, I wake up every morning and I have no idea what the day is going to look like because of the way my ex is going to respond to anything. So there's a lot of not just like, hey, good morning, babe. Have a great day. See you later. You're like, oh my God, I just got served this and this is happening and this is happening. And I can't so you're having your life is a shit show for a while and it's very traumatic. So you need to know that there's going to be somebody who it might have worked in a different scenario, but they're not going to go on this ride with you because it's very hectic. And you're going to hopefully find somebody that will understand that you are lovable and that you're not a product of this situation forever, but the patience level that they're going to need to have is huge because we all talk about our exes, in like very little bit, you're typically in a relationship, you're not wanting to sit there and spend all of your conversation talking about your freaking ex. That's like a red flag. But in this situation, if you have kids, you're spending a lot of time talking about your ex. And that takes a pretty solid man to be able to handle that. And then also being able to like hear all this shit you're going through and not want to react and respond in a protective way. You just have to they have to be there for you and they have to listen. But it's a special kind of person too that can take on and, like fix the parts of you that they didn't break.
Yeah. I will say too with, thinking, okay, I've done the healing and I feel pretty good. I'm good. If a good guy comes along, I'm going to know it and I'm not going to let go of him. But then you're faced with like all of these new things that come out that you didn't realize were unhealed yet. So it's almost like you're in this relationship and then your things are still coming up from the past that you thought were resolved. It's just those triggers I look at as like, okay, this is where I still need to do the work. Like trust issues or self-sabotage things. It's hard to know when you're fully healed, but I will say being in another relationship, it's like, oh, okay, I know. Okay. I still have to heal there and there and there.
Yeah.
And it's never ending. Yeah.
It's like you said, it's like we're always healing, so somebody's willing to go on the healing journey with you.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's wonderful. Together. Yeah. And that's why, like you said, it has to be an emotionally mature man, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody who, and obviously what you came from was not an emotionally mature man, among many other things. Right. But so before this, we were going back and forth and you mentioned that there is a myth about domestic abuse that you wish more people understood. What is that?
For me, the myth about domestic abuse is that it happens a lot more than we're talking about. And I truly believe that we are facing the greatest health crisis of our time. And this is a matter of public importance. And I am so here to say this because I'm currently being challenged. My First Amendment rights are being currently challenged. And I'm realizing that this is a matter of public importance. This is such a topic that the myth is not a black eye and like a teddy bear on the ground and like a girl hovering in the corner. That is not domestic abuse anymore. It is, we are fed antiquated information about what this truly is. And it is an epidemic in my opinion. And it's men and women. It's not just women, but which is a bad word, is a podcast that we focus on women. And it's sometimes so just covert. It's not necessarily in your face. It literally can be something that's just so veiled by misinformation. Like, well, I don't think I'm being abused. And we'll go back to the financial thing. Well, he just likes to take care of everything. Like, I think we've had a few guests on the show, two in particular. We had Nadine Macaluso, and she was so amazing. The way she described her situation and about domestic abuse is we are feeding girls these fairy tales of that, this man is going to come on his horse and he's going to save you from whatever distress you're in. And then, life is going to go just be so amazing. But we forget the rest of the story. We're not telling the kids the rest. Like, well, actually, he might be an asshole. He might tell you can't work anymore. He might control your finances. We're not giving like a true picture of what, we don't need to be saved. women are stronger than we ever will admit. I'm going to say we're stronger than men. I mean, tell me I'm a feminist. I don't care. But like, we have an ability to take care of ourselves, and we have to stop thinking we need a man to come and save us, because we can do it on our own. And if you put yourself in a position where you think you need someone to take care of you, you are giving them power that they can use to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
So keep your power, be your own boss, it's okay to be a bitch. Like, it is.
In the good way.
In a good way. And in a way, flex yourself. Yeah. Flex. Like, the guys flex and we're like, oh God, he's such a man. A girl flexes, a woman flexes, and you're like, oh, she's such a bitch. You know, no. So I think, the myth is that it's obvious. It's, it's not obvious. It is very covert, and it is very rampant. And like I said, it is an epidemic that we are here. And this has become my life's work. I have a foundation that I'm helping. It's called the BFF Alliance, helping women understand the situations that they're going through. Like, this is my life's work. I will not stop talking, helping, understanding what women are here. I'm sitting here going, okay, if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. If it's happened to you, I'm here for you. Please let me help you. But we have to start being okay talking about, it's no longer a scarlet letter. There is no shame in saying, I allowed this in my life and it happened to me and I'm ready for help. So we talk about this a few times. Like, when you're in a domestically abusive relationship, you lie to everybody about the reality that you're in. So it's really hard to walk back a lie, because you've like, I've told you for all these years that I'm okay. And I haven't been, and I've lied to you. So let me take that burden off of your listeners and our listeners. There is no shame in covering for your abuser, because you have to. And standing up and speaking out and saying, hi, I'm an abused woman. I need help. Go do it. Say it. And there is no shame in the reasons why you stayed. There's no shame in leaving and coming back, leaving and coming back, leaving and coming back, because you will. I left many times before I left forever. And you have to have that strength and that understanding. Like, if you go back again, there's no shame that you have kids, you're financially connected, whatever the reasons were that inspired you to have to go back, that's okay too. And today, your listeners may be hearing, and hopefully we're touching on something that this inspires them to say, now I'm ready to go. But if today isn't the day, that's okay too. If you sit here and you sit on this and you've listened to the show and it's months or years down the line before you go, I hope you're safe. I hope you're good. We love you. We got your back. But drop the shame.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. Very well said. Thank you. How can those who are not in abusive relationships help people who are? What can I do? What can my next door neighbor do to help women in these situations?
Take the kids, help them, be just like, can I take your kids for a little while so you can work on your divorce declaration or whatever you have to do, your plan. If you can, we have a woman who was on our show who was helping her friend by helping her hold gift cards for her exit strategy. Was she could spend whatever money she wanted to spend at a Nordstrom or Whole Foods or whatever, but she couldn't have access to cash. That was very similar to my story. And she taught her, she's like, go buy gift cards. So at every major department store, you can buy a gift card for a Visa gift card for something else. So it doesn't look as if you're squirreling money away, because it looks like a purchase of wherever you've spent. I mean, if this is your financial situation, if you don't have, everybody comes from a different financial situation, but she ended up amassing something like $25,000 worth of gift cards that she was able to bankroll her life when she left. So, if you do have a friend who's willing to talk to you, I mean, again, you're most likely not telling your inner circle this is happening, because the second you admit it, they're not coming over to hang out with you. We can't wait to have Sunday dinner with you, and you're got all this shit you just told me about this guy. So,
right.
If you can help women, give them a place to sleep, let them stay on your couch, help them, find the resources that are available to them, and know that she's in a traumatic situation. She is suffering in a form of PTSD that she won't be making the right choices. But be there to help make the right choices of, these are the resources that you need. I found this attorney. I'm going to take your kids for you for a little while. You go do the work you need to do to get out.
And lend an ear and support, even though you may not understand, and it would be so foreign to most unless you've gone through it, but just listening. And then if they go back and then leave again and go back and leave again, don't be surprised. I know it's really hard for those that have supported us to watch us like stay in these relationships and go back to the person. And it's just really difficult to explain to other people unless you're in it. And, so I would say just having compassion and listening and being supportive and helping to bring clarity to, like an outside perspective that isn't fuzzy and distorted. And it's like, no, that is not okay. That is abuse. Or, to be reminded, because I was so confused. I didn't know what I was even dealing with for so many years. So to have somebody on the outside say, no, that's not okay to be treated like that. Those gentle, compassionate reminders from your support system go a long way.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. Thank you so much for all of this wonderful advice. And I am going to put the links where people can find you up on the screen for those who are watching, for those who are listening. They'll be in the show notes. And you can always contact me if you want to reach out to Lindsay and Mac, the BFF Alliance, and the Bitch is a Bad Word podcast. So we'll have all that up, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. And again, I just want to thank you for doing what you're doing and being so open and honest and sharing your stories, because that is how we help people make better decisions, is letting them know that they're not the only ones. They're not alone. Many people have gone through this, and here's how you can help yourself and get out. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
It's our pleasure. Remember, and we say this, there's no safety in staying silent. So please speak up for yourself or for anybody else that that might be in this situation.
Love it. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you for having us on your show.